Hello everyone, welcome to my stream. If you were here last week, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. It's only my second stream, so happy to be doing it again here. I am open to answering your questions about things. I've prepared some stuff on the side that I can go through as you perhaps prepare your questions, but there's a couple things I want to mention from last time. I forgot to enable the live chat replay last time on the video. So I did it this time. So hopefully if you're watching this on YouTube at a future date, you'll be able to see the live chat comments there. And I also installed an app to try to highlight your comments on screen. There's no native support in this with OBS. I use OBS to stream the videos. And I was trying to find a way to like show your comments on the screen as you ask them. And I set up something here, so we'll see if it actually works. MTM, I'm doing good. Hope you're doing well also. And let me see. I'm just looking at the tool here for highlighting the chats. It's not quite refreshing, but let's see. Let's hit refresh and see if it works. Well, I'll play with that later, so I don't want to take up too much time there. I do want to revisit one question that someone asked last time, which is using masks on a filter. And I didn't have a good answer for that. I was looking at the FX option in the Affinity Designer. But actually in Affinity Photo, you can do filters, you can do masks quite easily on filters. I thought I'd start with an example here. And Sandra, welcome to the stream. Happy to see you there. So I have this example here, and so I'll show you how to use a live filter and add a mask to it. So this is just an image here. And I'll click one of the live filters down here. And you can see we have lots of options. And the cool thing about live filters is they're not destructive. So you can use them and you can turn them on and off, and it's not going to permanently alter your image underneath it. So I'll choose one that's kind of just normal Gaussian blur, let's say. And let's crank it up. So I'll make it really blurry here. So you can see that the whole image is being blurred here. And what I can do now is I can actually mask it. So what I can do is I can add a mask to this here. So I'll click mask. And I can drag it onto the blur filter there. And I can just choose a paintbrush. Now with masking, the black option will hide part of the mask. So I'll select black. And you can see I can paint over the filter here. So I believe the question last week was specifically for masking out part of a blur filter. So of course this isn't the best masking job here. You can see it's kind of rough around the edges, but the possibility is there. And I can turn it on and off. And the whole Gaussian blur filter I can turn on and off. Sandra, thank you very much for the thanks for the tutorials. Hello, Osman from Scotland. I have not been there, but would love to go sometime. There's lots of cool live filters though. I actually haven't made any videos on these yet. I should just choose like a group of these and make one. I thought about making one on all the blur filters. One that's kind of interesting is the Voronoi filter. Kind of this type of effect going on. And like I said, you can add a mask to this. So maybe you don't want your waffles to have that filter on it. So I'll add a filter. I'll add a mask to it. And I can paint it out here. It's kind of a funny picture, I think. But yes, you can mask filters like that. If the person from last week who asked that question is here, hopefully that answers your question a little bit better than last week. And I think you can also just paint directly on it like you can with an adjustment layer. So let me add another filter. Let's add noise. I'll add a ton of noise so you can see it. And yeah, I can just paint right on it too. So I didn't manually add the mask here. So there it is. Hello, Boz from England. Yeah, I was saying I was trying to set up something where I could highlight your comments on the screen, but it doesn't seem to be refreshing. And I tried a couple options with this last night, but you can't really test any of this stuff unless you're doing a live stream. So I didn't want to take up too much of your time now. I might just create a short stream at some random time with no one there to test out these commenting features. Before I was streaming, I thought it was just a common feature on YouTube where you could just like click on the chat and highlight someone's comment, but apparently not. So in StreamYard, I think that's pretty possible, but not here. So that was a follow-up to a question from last week. So this week I was looking a lot at the videos I published were related to the text tools. And I did want to go over some of that if there aren't any other questions at the moment. Of course, I can always take questions. But I know I wanted to make a video more about stylizing text in a better way. And let me show you what I mean by that. So I talked about the artistic text filter, or the artistic text tool this week. And that video got a lot of comments and a lot of support, I think. So I think it's a topic that a lot of people are interested in. So I have a site here, Creative Fabrica. I show it a lot, but it's just a really good resource. And the reason I'm showing it here is because I want to give you a little demonstration of how to use text that you get online, like how to use fonts that you get online, and how to use them effectively. Because I think sometimes you look at a font and it looks really cool in the thumbnail here, but when you download it and actually use it, it's hard to make it actually look as stylistic as it does in the demonstration. Mark, hello from Germany. Bill, hello from Florida. Hello, you're from Florida, of course. I'm not from Florida. I'm in Massachusetts, by the way, in case anyone wasn't aware. So one thing I'll do is I actually already installed this font. So let me show you how we could actually use this. And this is kind of going to the artistic text demo I gave, the video I released this week. I want to show you some special features of this font in particular. And it's kind of common to a lot of fonts, but I think it'll help you get more out of fonts that you use. So let me just copy this. And I'll paste this here. I'm in Affinity Designer now. So I installed this font and it's called Retro Boogie. Let me just type it here. Actually, I lied. I didn't install it on this computer. Let me just download it real quick and install it. So I'll download it. And this should take just a couple seconds. Again, in Affinity programs, when you install a font onto your computer, it just it should automatically work. So I'll install the OTF. Oh, Bob, you're in Massachusetts too. Cool. Nice. Yeah, how'd you do with the snow this week? Hello, IH, from Germany also. 2 people from Germany so far. All right. Let me just write some text here. I can't see over my microphone. That's a problem sometimes. All right. Let's just do this. Hi from Spain. Hi, Alan. So I have this text here, and let me just use this font here. So I downloaded it. It's called Retro Boogie. Let's see what it looks like. And we can do this. Now it's kind of interesting right off the bat when you look at a font like this. It's very stylized, and I was kind of surprised when I first used it because it does actually do this concept really well. Whoops. I might have to jump. So as I said in the frame text video, in both videos, there's this concept of ligatures in fonts. And if you're not familiar with that word, let me write it down. It's called a ligature. Let me put it in normal font so you can read it. So a ligature is it's a special type of glyph that represents 2 characters together. I said 2 characters, but it could actually be more than 2. Sometimes it's 3. And it's kind of a special representation of them that looks more pleasing than just putting 2 letters together. And one of the keys to really getting the most out of a font is to look at the glyph browser. So let me open the glyph browser here. If you go to Window, Text, Glyph Browser. And glyphs are they're the images that represent a letter. Okay, so and a letter could have more than 1 glyph. So this is a very common thing in more complex fonts, is that you start to get more images per letter. In fact, I'll show you a little thing right here. If you look at this G, there's actually another glyph for it that I'll show you in a second. But this concept of ligatures here, if you scroll down through the font, did I make this as big as I can? I made this as big as I can, so hopefully you can see it. But here you can see all the different ligatures in the font. So RE is a ligature, 2 letters together. TR is one. So let me take this out here. If I actually just wrote it with spaces between, you'll see like how it actually would look. Like this is what those letters actually look like. But then when you actually select the ligatures, it can actually kind of smartly wrap them, or it chooses an image to actually represent them better. So this RE is a ligature. I can see that here. This TR is a ligature, probably. Somewhere in there. Might be up more. Yeah, actually RET is a ligature here. So it's a pretty cool property of fonts that helps you understand them a little bit better. Very common ligatures are TT, FI, just a lot of like these characters that look better. They look better when they're specialized together. So that's one aspect of this that kind of helps you get closer to this. Now this one, by default, it kind of gave us these, so that's kind of interesting. But down in the bottom, you can see we do have a problem. The B is different. Is that showing up there? So the B and the G are different here. So what I can do is I can select the B, and I can look through the fonts. So I can try to find the actual one that represents this image over here better. Whether or not it actually looks better or not, it's up for debate, but I think it just gives you an idea of how you could actually swap it out. So as you scroll through, you see all the alternates. And here it is. So there's the different B. So I can click on this, and I have a different B there. And this G, you can see, has this big swooshy area underneath it. Quite often you'll see that's the case with these fonts. They have different glyphs for like a lot of these very fancy ones. There's kind of a standard G, but then they have a very fancy one down there. Let me ignore the spelling. Sometimes when you switch out different glyphs, you'll get these the red line for spelling errors. So where's this G with the wavy tail? Let's see. I'm trying to, it's not this one here. So yeah. So there we go. So I was able to find the different characters to actually get a more closer look to this. Now again, whether or not you like this more than the other one, it's kind of up to you, but you can see when you look through a font, you'll see all these different options. If it's a more complicated font, sometimes they're simple and they just have, you know, the 26 lowercase, 26 uppercase, and numbers. So I'm curious if anyone like ever uses these typography features. I find them pretty useful there. It's definitely a way to get more out of the fonts. Now you'll also notice here, okay, our text here looks a little plain. How do we get closer to something like this over here? Well, you can see there's the outline of it. So that's one aspect of it, an outline and kind of a shadow there. So the outline is fairly simple. I'll close the glyph browser. So we can just add some type of outline there. I'll select the color, do the color picker, select that. And we can decide how thick we want it to be. Now a big decision here is kind of where do we want the outline to be, on the inside or the outside? That's going to have a big effect on it. So with my stroke here with the align options, it's kind of centered right now. I can also say outside. That's actually inside, and here's outside. Here's something you want to be very careful about with when you do the stroke on the inside. If you zoom in, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a white line here. So that's why I don't use that one too much. I think it's a little, I don't know why it doesn't render better there, but it gives you kind of, I think wherever the fill color is, it's going to give you a little bit of a aliasing effect there on the edge. So that's when you do the inside stroke. So I prefer probably do the outside stroke. It doesn't seem to happen in that case. It's great, Sandra. Glad that's helpful. Yeah, fonts are an interesting thing. I used to work with fonts in one of my older jobs, and things like ligatures and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of fascinating, all the history of it, and putting it into a digital form is also a challenge. It's non-trivial, all the fonts, especially when you work with different languages. And we did ebooks that were obviously English is left to right, but then you have other languages where it's right to left and all sorts of formatting options. And you know, there's the whole concept of what is it, widows and orphans, of how you format paragraphs and leading text and all this kind of stuff. It's an interesting subject, I thought. But yes. So this is how we could add the stroke there. Now, to add the kind of shadow effect, there's definitely lots of different ways you can do it. Probably the simplest way is you can just copy your text. And, well, I'll call that the background one. and just make that the dark one. I'll take this. And you can just put it behind. So let me send it to the back. I'll bring it up front. Whoops. And you can just do something like that. That's kind of one of the main ways people do that. Another way people do it is, let me delete that. Let me show a simpler, let me just show one word so it's not so much on the screen. Another way people do that is you can copy it, and then if you do Control J, it's the power copy or the power duplicate, which wasn't working there. Let me try it again. There we go. Yeah, so you can do this. I grouped it, move it behind. Whoops. That didn't work out very well. Let me do that again. All right, so I'll do this. Actually, I want to go up the other way. Yeah, so then I want to not select that one. So I want to select the ones behind it. So that's how you can do that with the power duplicate method. And if you zoom in, you don't see too much of an edge there. It's kind of fine. You can also add all these together with the Boolean add option. And that's going to change color, but you can change the color back like that. Now you're going to you should only do this once you're pretty certain that you're done editing, working with the text. So, you can change it again later, but it's kind of a little bit of a pain to go and add these drop shadow curves in if you have to change the wording. But, if it's your name or your company name, hopefully it's not changing that much. There's also one other option I tried, which was kind of interesting, which was to use the FX option for a drop shadow. But there's a little bit of a problem with that. I'll show you. So I'll do FX here. And you can do an outer shadow. You can make it really big. So you want to increase the intensity so it's practically solid. But the problem, you can probably see it already, is that when you do this effect, it does have a little bit of I think it has a rasterizing effect there, so you're going to see a little bit of a non-vector edge. By default, the blend mode is multiply, so I'll set the blend mode to normal here. And the opacity I'll crank up. So this is actually using a drop shadow method. And like I said, I think it can work pretty well. You can actually dynamically rechange it. So in this case, I could change the text. And it's going to actually do the thing. I can change the angle of the shadow I want there. But the downside, which may or may not matter, is if you zoom in, you can see, again, the pixelization compared to the vector letters themselves. So depending on your resolution, maybe it's not a big deal. I don't know. But it's another way to get that effect going there. So I could do retro. So I think we've basically covered this one here. So I think I'm going to do a video on this in the future, kind of how to stylize these more. There's other examples on Creative Fabrica of other text effects, but I kind of want to start with a basic thing like this because I think sometimes people, they download a font and they're kind of underwhelmed by it initially because they don't add extra effects to it or don't take full advantage of it. So want to just give a little bit of a demonstration here. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything about fonts. Yeah, the power duplicate function is very useful. Like I said, let me delete this. If you copy something, or if you move something, let me just move it. And if you do Control J, it just redoes the last thing you did. I don't know why that's not working. There we go. Okay, yeah. So let me do it with something obvious, so it's a little less. So if I do a square, if I move the square, Control J will just do it again. So that's a useful feature, I think. Now, one other interesting thing from the frame text video, someone made an interesting point that I didn't notice, that I didn't know, which was that you can actually, in Affinity Designer, you can kind of spread text across different fields. So let me show you that. If I do a box here, but it's not as flexible as Affinity Publisher. If you're working with text, Affinity Publisher is really the one to do. But what I can do is I can select both of these things. I can add them together, and I can actually make this a text frame. Layer, convert to text frame. And they kind of disappear for a moment. Let me just copy some text here. And if I paste in one, it will go across to the other. But unlike Affinity Publisher, it's not as flexible. Like it's not actually, well, it does kind of smartly scroll a little bit. It does smartly scroll a little bit, but I was told that the last line isn't as well formatted as it is in Publisher. So again, I think Publisher is the best tool to use for this job. So Bob asks, is there an easy way to view and select a font for your project? I use the font catalog I got off the MS Store. This allows me to easily see all available fonts. Yeah, that's a good question. Mostly I browse through the font options here. But one thing I do, let me get some text here on the screen. Test. So one thing I like to do when I'm doing a project is I'll just like keep track of my fonts here. So maybe I'll say like, I'll just like put it on the screen myself, right? So maybe you know, I'm doing some type of book title. And it's like, okay, that's one I like. Then maybe I'll just create another one and I'll scroll through. I'll find another one I like. And I'll just kind of keep like track of things. I'll just build myself a little palette of what I like as I'm working through it. But in terms of like seeing everything at a glance, they're probably third-party tools, but in Font Catalog, I haven't used it, but maybe that's an interesting one. So far, I just kind of browse through my options here, and you know, also sometimes use my memory, which probably isn't the best, but I have a couple go-tos, but you know, maybe I rely on the same fonts a little too much. One other thing I did want to mention about Creative Fabrica is they do give you a glyph browser, which I only noticed recently. Let me open up their site again. So if you're looking at a font on this website, if you go down here, view all glyphs, you can actually go here and you can actually see everything inside that font. So this is all the stuff I showed you before. So it's actually kind of useful. I'm actually surprised they put it all out here because, you know, it's kind of a copyrighted info, but yeah, you can see all of it here. This yellow, there's some concept, I haven't looked into it too much yet. Something about some type of character encoding. Because I believe with a font, you have the extra space to kind of add your own characters and things like that. But yeah, Bob, hopefully that answers your question a little bit. But yeah, I don't actually use any kind of tool to mass view fonts and things like that. I just kind of build my own little palettes and look at them. So one other thing I was looking at this week was I filmed the phone case design catalog. I filmed the phone case design video yesterday, and I still have to edit it, but I wanted to show you a little bit of what I was doing there. So Phil says, WordMark is a web-based program that will show you every font on your system. Oh, that sounds interesting. Okay, WordMark. All right. Thanks, Phil. I haven't used that one yet. So let me go to Printify here. So this is, like I said, I want to do more POD videos. So I filmed the phone case design one yesterday. So here's Printify. And I created these two designs. One is more of a pattern-based design, and one is more what I would call a composition-based design. So this one here, I made this one, kind of used some clip art and stuff like that, but put it all together. And you know, the hard thing about phones is that they have it's a very random form factor in the sense that you have these huge things called cameras in random places at the top of your image, right? So, you know, this phone has a camera there. However, if we go down to like Samsung Galaxy 20 or something, okay, so this phone has this camera, right? So you have to account for this type of account for this type of design. You have to account for this type of thing, and there's other ones as well. So I was trying to explain how to do that in the video and how to actually, for people that are interested in designing this type of thing, how to actually work around this problem. And I actually, let me show you. Printify does have templates for all the phones. So this is the templates for all the different phone cases. So you can see it's quite a challenge to get something to work across all of these. But my approach is really to actually create a kind of a little template with a safe area in it. So you have this green safe area here, and you can kind of see that most of these designs, you're allowed to resize the safe area if you like. You're allowed to resize the whole design as long as you overlap all of the area here. But when you're designing, you really want to make sure that you're basically covering the green space with the important stuff, and that the rest of it, the bleed area, is filled with non-important stuff. So that's what I was doing over here. This would be the green area, and the rest of it is kind of just a pattern that repeats. And the file I was doing that with was, let me show you this one. So this is the guide. This is how the guide works there. So this, I made a video showing how I made this all together, all the different pieces of it, how it all comes together. And what I'm going to do today after this video is I'm going to order some samples. So I'm going to edit the video further to like show you the final samples I ordered from Printify. So that will be interesting, I hope. And I want to do a series of more videos on how to do Printify products. Let me show you the other design I did. So this is a seamless pattern example, and it's kind of a retro 80s style here. So it's there's actually a repeating pattern here. It's kind of hard to see, but it is there. And again, with a repeating pattern, you don't have to worry too much about the layout of the phone, because you can just repeat the pattern forever. And you don't really care if the camera cuts off part of the pattern or the edge of the phone cuts off part of the pattern, because it's all basically just going to repeat, like I said. So here's another one. This kind of stuff is definitely, it can be frustrating when you're doing a composition-based design, but when you're doing something that's a pattern, it's a little easier. And my design for that, is it this one? Yeah, so this is a seamless pattern here. I'm not sure if any of you see my seamless pattern video, but I explain how to do this in Affinity. And the key to doing a seamless pattern really is that you want to make sure the things on either side line up and will not cause a seam, not cause a break. So let me show you how you can do that. I'll just give you a quick little preview. If you do the snapping here, so I'll move this around. The key is really to get this to snap to this edge here. So I have that green line, which means it's aligned perfectly at that edge. Now I can hold Alt, copy it over here, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to get it aligned at this other edge here. Okay, so I see the green line showing up, so it's aligned at both those edges. So if I select both these shapes, if I align them in the middle, I can apply. And if I drag them, as long as I keep them aligned like that and I don't move them independently, it'll be a fully wrapping pattern there. So I'll explain how to do that in the video also, but that's the essential concept there. So I'm not sure if anyone does seamless patterns, but that's definitely I like the way of doing that in Affinity Designer. There's no live preview of patterns, so that's something I've always missed. I wish there was, but doing this method, I'll export the graphic like this, and then I'll just test it in another program. So yes, I'll close that. So that was the main videos I'm working on right now, the print on demand video, and I want to do some more text and typography videos. Certainly if anyone has any requests for topics related to Affinity or Affinity Photo, happy to take them as suggestions. Just close this one. But yes, this is just one of the products. And if I show you the Printify page, has anyone out there used Printify to design things? You can choose it here, phone cases. So I do this one. And you get all the pricing here. And you can do the shipping costs and all that kind of stuff. But more for the design stuff, you want to click Start Designing. And they actually do give you a tool to design inside of the program itself, but I prefer to just actually do it in Affinity Designer, and I just upload my designs that way. So you can select all the variants here. It can be quite overwhelming because there's a lot, so I'll update. And then as you do your design here, you can preview it as well. So Sandra says you can test your pattern by saving it as an asset and then using the gradient tool to test it. Yeah, that's a great point. Let me do that so people can see what you mean. This one, yeah. So I'll go File, Export, and I'll just export as a PNG. And yeah, let's export it. I'll just export downloads, pattern. So I'm going to create a new document. And this is just to test the pattern. So I can just draw a square here, rectangle. And then using the gradient tool, with the type, I can select bitmap. So I selected the gradient tool here, and I went type bitmap. And I can select my pattern. If I click that, you can see it comes in there. And what I can do is I can actually click and drag to adjust the size of it. And that can, you know, give you an idea of like the scale. I can rotate it around as I want also, but I just do the normal size. And I try to make sure I get a couple of repetitions in there so I can look at it. Now, if we look at this design, I know, so this circle to this pattern here, this is where the seam is, or it's not going to be there hopefully, but that's where we should look. So I'm gonna look at this circle there. If I zoom in, I can see there's no seam there. Nothing is broken. And everything looks good here. So again, what I do is I find like where's the edge. So again, this triangle here. I'm looking through, I'm not noticing any breaks. This shape here is the corner. So this is actually the intersection of 4 different shapes here, actually. So if you look at it, that's like this, that's like that, and that. So that 4 things are coming together to make this. And I'm not seeing any breaks, so that's a good sign. But if you download seamless patterns from Creative Fabric or Creative Market or any website, you should always double check them for 2 reasons. Sometimes they're not truly seamless. There's like a fault in the alignment or something. And a lot of times they export it, I think, incorrectly or something, because there'll be like a white line on the edge. And it can definitely be very frustrating. So I always, if I'm ever using a pattern from any website, I always verify it manually. So Oliver says, maybe a rasterization video would be helpful, especially for textile print. Interesting, yeah. So when you say rasterization video, do you mean taking vectors and rasterizing them to like bitmaps? I'm just curious, just kind of want to get more of an idea like what you would hope to see in that type of video. I did have a comment recently on one of my videos. They were talking about, it was on the export persona video, and they were confused because when you export it, it says 1x, 2x, 3x, and they wanted to know, well, what is the resolution going to be? You know, this is a vector program. How do I know what the pixels are going to be? And I can show you in a tool like this one. So this is a vector image. It's all vector, but the resolution, you know, it has infinite resolution as we're working in Affinity Designer, of course. But when we export it, it's going to have a resolution. So basically, if you're doing inches, it's just going to take the inches and multiply by the DPI. So that's why, so 10 times 300 is going to be 3,000 pixels side by side by default. So that's going to be the 1x resolution of this, 10 times 300, 3,000. So if I do export right now, you'll see that number come up. So it's 3,000. And because it's vector, I can go twice as big and it'll just still look great because it's a vector image. If you have raster elements in here, scaling up, you know, indefinitely might give you, bad results. but that's essentially how you would find the resolution of a vector image. So you can make it be anything, but by default, it does have a default resolution, which is going to be this. And I could do pixels and it'll do, it'll convert it to that way. And like I've said many times, DPI means nothing when you have pixels selected. DPI just is relevant for inches. But yes. So yeah, Sandra, thanks for mentioning that you can test the pattern there. It's definitely a useful thing I do. Actually, I'll break the pattern here just to show you like what it would look like if it was broken. So if I had this, if I just shifted it over maybe just a little bit, I was a little bit off. I didn't notice that. Let's export it. Let's see what happens. Pattern. Now it doesn't automatically refresh here. Let me do it again. And yeah, it's very subtle, but you can see there's a problem there. So that means if you see something like that, that means you didn't quite do it correctly, okay? So let me do this again, just so I don't have this faulty file around. There, all right. And let's align it. I see, okay. Rasterization where you create a image into many dots. Yeah, that's that's like a halftone pattern, right? Let me see that. Halftone pattern image. If I'm understanding you correctly, let me find an image. Let me see if I can put something up on screen that explains that. Can't find a good image. Okay, this isn't the best one, but like, do you mean something like this? Like a halftone thing? Okay, yeah. Yeah, halftone, that'd be a great idea for video. I'll make a note of that, definitely. I just want to double test this pattern again because I'm paranoid if I save it incorrectly. That's one of my, fears is sending out a pattern that doesn't work. And yeah, here it goes. Seems to work. But yeah, so far I've put patterns on rugs, desk mats, phone cases, and I've sold those things. And so far the pattern's always been okay, so I'm happy with that. But there is a thing in Printify where when you add a pattern to something, it does on the tool, it does show you the pattern is breaking, which is kind of annoying. Let me repeat this. So do on Printify, assuming you have a seamless pattern to begin with, you click the pattern button and you get that going there. But you can see there's these lines no matter what. And I think that's just part of the editor there. I think it doesn't actually do that in real life. But if you see that on a pattern you downloaded and you haven't tested it, be sure to test it yet because your pattern could be broken. But if your pattern works, you'll still see these lines anyway. I'm not sure if this is showing up on the stream, but on my screen, I can see thin white lines where the file actually breaks. And it's definitely frustrating. I've seen people complain about that on Facebook and various other places. So it'd be nice if Printify would fix this. But by the way, Printify updated their interface, this whole interface, like 2 weeks ago or so. So I'm glad I actually kind of waited to make a video on them because it would be a little bit outdated with this interface here. So I'll close this. So yeah, so that's a little preview of what's coming up, some font videos and working on the phone cases. And I kind of wanted to stay on for 30 minutes, but it looks like we're a little bit past 30 minutes. I'll give you guys another chance if you have any questions or anything like that. I don't want to kind of sign off without answering your questions. But Oliver, thanks for your question about the halftones. I have looked into that briefly in the past. I should look again. I don't know if there's a filter for it. Oh, there's a halftone filter. So let's see. Maybe right now we can see how this works. So yeah, so we have this. So this is a live filter in Affinity photo there. This looks like there's lots of options. I am having memories now. I did play with this a little bit in the past. So there are these options. I don't know how to vectorize it, but again, I don't know how to vectorize it, but it seems like from a raster perspective, we could do this here. So just to review how I did that, I selected the live filters here in Affinity Photo, and I clicked halftone. So by default, it does this black and white option, but you can also select different colors, line options there. So that'd be an interesting topic for a video, I think. So thanks for the suggestion. So Oliver says, have you tested several pod services and found Printify to be the best? Yeah, so I used to use Printful back in the day, and they were okay, but I just found Printify's prices to be a little bit better and selection to be better too. The thing about Printify is they're just a kind of a unified interface between all the different companies that do it. So if you actually go to their website, when you look at things, let me go back here. Yes, close. So the people that actually make this phone case is a company called WOIC. And if you look at the catalog, so let's say, I don't know, let's look at t-shirts. So if you click at the t-shirts, you're going to see it's actually different companies that make it. And Printify, what they do is they provide a unified interface for it. So it's the same design interface, it's the same interface for you. But when your product is made, when your product order comes in, it goes through Printify, and Printify forwards it to the actual company, whether it's whatever, Duplium or Demonity or some other one, MWW on demand. So I've had good luck with them. Again, it's going to depend on the final print provider. But one thing that Printify is really great at, I've had very good luck with their customer support. I've had a couple products where the prints didn't come out correctly, or the customer complained about it being broken or damaged, or it didn't arrive. And Printify has been very good about giving me refunds, and of course, I give the customer a refund. But their customer service has worked really well for me. I should say I don't do like T-shirts and things like that. I know some people have a lot of problems with that, just because like T-shirts are so variable, I think, in the options. It's so the ones I mostly do are rugs, desk mats, clocks. I do clocks. I've had some issues with. It's a great product, but sometimes the manufacturing is a little can cause some issues sometimes. So, but thankfully, every time there's a problem, again, I've given my customer a refund, and Printify gives me a refund. So, yeah, I've tried different ones. I prefer Printify at the moment. I might add some other ones. There are some foreign ones like Subliminator. Printify does support some Subliminator products, but I want to do some more, so I might do some more there. And I might do some more ArtsAd stuff. Most of the good print providers, like Printify, has some of their stuff, but sometimes they don't have all of their stuff, which can be a little frustrating. So I think it's a great place to start with Printify. So Bob says, can I trust the inches metric to print out at this paper the proper size in inches when printed at 300 dpi? Yeah, I think the driver for your printer should know that when you print out at a certain size, it'll be like the actual inches there. I would test it, but in general, I've had good luck with that. Usually it knows. So again, it's going to depend on the printer. So I hope that answers your question. I haven't done a lot of, Bob, I haven't done a lot of like printing actual things to see the exact size on paper. So I would double check it, like if you had a ruler or something. Yeah, but hopefully I think it should work. I actually made a cross stitch pattern for my mom recently, but the final pattern didn't really, the size didn't matter. She just needed like it as a reference. But I think I hope it should work. Depending on the printer driver, it should be smart enough to know that. So I hope that answers your question. So Boz says, what's your opinion on Photoshop versus Affinity Suite for graphic design? As a newbie, I have the option to learn both, but what do you want to focus? But I want to focus on one. Anyone else had this dilemma? Yeah, it's a tricky thing because, I try to be perfectly honest and say, like, in the industry, if you're with people that are using Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, it's tough to get out of that ecosystem because they're using those file formats and they're using those features and things like that. So I would say, it's worth learning. The good news, I think, is like so many of the concepts are very common. That the graphic design concepts and photo editing concepts are going to be the same across like everything. Blend modes, adjustment layers, masking, vectors, shape building tools, colors, all this kind of stuff. 90% of it is going to be pretty much the same. And I think if you have to like pivot and choose, go to one or the other, I think you can do it. Maybe this is like a dirty secret, but I use Photoshop for some things. I use Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo for like the vast majority, but there are a couple of little tiny use cases where sometimes like once a month I have to use Photoshop for something. But I do think if you're an independent designer who doesn't have to interact with other ecosystems, I would certainly say try the Affinity suite to start with. If you do decide you need Photoshop later on, like I said, I think a lot of the skills will carry over, so I wouldn't get too paranoid about getting like locked into one thing, So I would say, right now you can, if money is an issue, go with the cheaper one, which is I believe Affinity in the long term. And I just, I will say I like Affinity Designer way more than Illustrator. I just find Designer so much more flexible, and like the user interface seems like nicer. I just get really overwhelmed with the photo designer, not designer, but Illustrator like options. Like the text is so tiny, and it just like, I don't know. I just get flashbacks whenever I try to use it. I think some of the main things missing in Designer are shape blending. So you can actually, some tools let you actually blend two shapes together. So if you've never seen what that is, it doesn't actually support it. But like, let's say you have a square here, and then you have like another square over here, and it's like blue. You can actually like interpolate between these two things, like this kind of squares you want to get. This is a very bad demonstration, but it's kind of like how it actually works. Like you can take this and that, and a lot of tools will actually be able to give you the in-between thing, which is really cool for creating certain designs. And also, converting raster to vector is another big one that is kind of missing in the Affinity programs. I don't know if it's even worth it for them to do it at this point, since there's so many AI tools that are kind of coming online and doing it. And Creative Fabrica also has another free tool for converting raster to vector. It works okay with black and white stuff. With color, it's still, when you're converting color images to vector, it's going to be definitely hit or miss, unless you're doing simple cartoon graphics. And no problem, Bass. Yeah, Oliver says the AI files work very well in Designer. Yeah, I usually, I'll download assets in AI in Adobe Illustrator format or even EPS, and I'm usually pretty much able to get what I need out of them and copy and paste them into Affinity Designer. I'll also download Photoshop files, and usually I can get the graphics out and bring them into Affinity Photo. So yeah, hope that answers your questions, guys. So yeah, a blend tool like this would be pretty cool. And that's in Inkscape. I've kind of always toyed with doing a video on Inkscape and just like how to fill in some gaps with Affinity Designer using Inkscape. So that's one. The blend tool here would be a cool thing. And the vectorization tool is another one. So I think with that, I will wrap it up here. I like to keep these a little shorter for people that kind of watch on the replay, so they get something out of it too. But I thank you guys for coming, and I'm going to try next time. I really want to try to figure out how to get this thing to highlight your comments, because I really love to like show your comments on stream. That would be a really cool thing, because you guys ask great questions, and I think it would definitely, helps make you more interested when you see your comment on screen, right? I think it's kind of a cool thing. So I'm going to try to toy with that a little bit and try to get that working next time. But thanks again, guys, for all your questions and, of course, all your support on the channel. Have some videos coming out this week that I hope you like. And I hope to see you next time. And with that, have a good Sunday and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching.